Chapters. Welcome back to my channel, Margaret Knob Designs. This is another one in my series of the basics list. And what I wanted to do was to talk with you how I plan out a folio, whether I use chipboard or whether I use cardstock. And this is the way that I make it so that I can add up all the measurements and make sure that all my paper aligns properly. So I'm going to show you what I do first. And one of the things that I'm thinking about doing is I do this on a separate piece of paper. I also do templates for other things on some of my craft cardstock. Like this is a cutting guide for me for one of my, as I call it, a one-sheet wonder. And so I have it on there, and then I'm going to put I have this folio on the back of here. So basically what I've done with this, in order to figure out how much cardstock I needed and what I needed to do, is I wanted to make an album or a folio that was basically 6.5 by 9 inches. And this is going to be, you're going to have to determine what the cuts are going to be based upon how strong or how big you want to make the cover, the back of the folio, and if it flips over. So this is the folio that I'm going to be using in my next tutorial for Bountiful Blessings. And as you can see, this is 6.5, and this one is 6.5 as well, the whole front. And then the back of this, I actually made it just a little bit bigger. It's a 6.75 or 6 3/4. And I have the spine on this side is 1 1/4, and this is 1 inch, because I wanted to have more depth over here because of this front cover going over this front cover. So I'm gonna show you how to line that up. I'm gonna show you how to score your cardstock for that, and I can give you measurements for the other matting, because what I do usually with a cardstock folio is that I do double mat it. Basically it's triple matting, because we put solid cardstock and then our designer paper on top of there. And I always use Artisan Cardstock by Country Craft Creations. It's the best for putting together folios. So what I do is that I go along on my mat. Here's my starting point for making this type of album. And this is 12 inches going across here. And I know I'm going to need a second 12 inches, so I did another 12 inches across here. So if I start out and I think about the fact that I want the front to be 6.5 inches, so I'm going to go all the way here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5 inches. So I'm making myself a note. I'm going to score at 6.5 inches. And then I want my spine to be 1 1/4, to make it a little bit bigger, like I said. So then I count out what I need to do. So we go to 1 inch. That's 1 1/4 is right here. And so I'm going to score at 7.75. Now, when you go along here, you can mark quarter, half, quarter. I find that I don't need to, is that when I'm doing this, see where I said this is 1 and then this is 1/4, I'll just measure in between this spot that I know that I need to measure 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. I don't do that all the way along. It takes too long. So then I've got my other score mark where I'm going to score at 7.75 or 7 3/4. I'm sorry, I go back and forth between measurements, and I know what I mean, but it can be confusing to other people. Sorry. So then what I have to think about is I now want the back of my folio to be 6 3/4, because I want it a little bit bigger. Plus, I need to think about the fact that I'm going to be using another 12 by 12 because once we're adding in our 6 3/4 back, I know that I'm going to have to add on some more paper. So what I frequently do is I will go to this point, and knowing this is not 6 3/4, I start out going back to front and see how my measurements line up and to find out how much my overlap is going to be. So this is at 4 1/4. So again, I did the 4.25, sorry. 4 1/4. And so I'm going to leave that right there. I know that my other sheet here, I know it sounds confusing, but it really isn't. I know that I need to have another sheet of 12 by 12 cardstock. So I'm going to start at the end of my book, which would be over here, because if we did this, this is my start and this is my end. So now I'm going to start over on my end. And I know I need to have a page that's 6 1/2 inches because the front cover was 6 1/2 inches. So I'm going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1/2. So my 6 1/2, I mark it off right here. And then I look at this and go, okay, I'm going to have a 1 inch gusset. So my 1 inch is right here to here. And then this is what I have left. So I have on here a 1 inch gusset, and if I measure that from here to here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 1/2. So I have 4 1/2 inches plus 4 1/4 inches. Remember I said that we had that over here. And if I add that together, I have 8 3/4. So add up this one and this one. So I have 8 3/4. So I have, between the two, I have 8 3/4, and I need to make the back of my folio at 6 3/4. So it means that I'm going to have 2 inches of cardstock to overlap, or I can cut it down to 1 inch or whatever, but I just put the 2 inches in there of overlap because that 2 inches plus this other section here with this is going to add up to my 6 3/4 because it's 8 3/4 minus 2 is 6 3/4. So now you might say, gosh, Margaret, that is so very confusing. But really, if you measure it out and you count out, this is your first page, this is your spine, this is going into your second page, or the back of the folio. And these are all like known. These are known measurements. And over here, I'd have to like figure out plus or minus for what I needed. But the reason why I started here was because I know I need this to be 6 1/2 inches, and I can't go any further than this 12 inches. So that's why I'm starting from here going to here. So 6 1/2, I have 1 inch spine, and now I'm here. So this is how much I have left. And then it'll tell me how much I can overlap or not overlap, or do I have to add another sheet in to make my folio. So let's go ahead and let's do the scoring for this, and I will show you what I mean by all of this as I go along to make it a little bit easier. So what I start out with is I have two 12 by 12 sheets, and what I did is I cut this down to 9 inches. So I have that all set, and the next thing that I need to do is I'm going to need to do the scoring for my sheets. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put my scoreboard into here, or my scoreboard, my sheets into here. So we're going to look at this, and on here what I have is is that from here to here, where I have my arrows on here, it says score at 6.5. Go across here, score at 7 3/4. So that's the two scores that we're going to do on this section. So we're going to score at 6.5, and then I'm going to score at 7 3/4, because that is going to make my spine. So I'll take that aside because I'm not going to go any further on that. And I'm going to take my other sheet of 12 by 12, and because I worked from backwards to the front, I have all my measurements, but then I start over and I look at it and I go, okay, so this is where one mark was. Well, what does this measure? It measures 4.5, and I have a 1-inch spine, and that measures 5.5. So, and then I'm going all the way to the end, so I don't have any more scoring down here. So on this sheet, I need to score at 4.5 and at 5.5. Those are the only two scores I have to make. The secondary thing, though, that if you want to make it just a little bit easier for you, something that I would recommend for some people is to do a light score. Remember I said you can overlap by 2 inches? 1, 2 is to put a light score in here so that you know exactly where you can line it up and match it up. So let's do that, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and take my second piece of cardstock, and I'm going to do a light score here. I'm not pressing very hard. I'm just doing it strong enough that I'll be able to see it. And then what it says on my sheet here is I'm doing a 4.5-inch score. So we're going to go to 4.5 inches. And we need a 1-inch spine, so we're going to go to 5.5 inches. So I apologize, I know this isn't probably as easy to see. Let me see if it's better this way. What did I do with my... So as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that or not. I hope you can. Take my ruler, and you can see from this is the end of the second sheet. From here to here is 6.5 inches, and this is 1 inch, and the total length of this is 4.5 inches. But we're going to line our one underneath here at the 2 inches. So let's go ahead and let's do that, and I'll show you what we're going to do. So a lot of times what I do is I take this and put on here cover sheet 2. Then I know for sure that's the one is number 2. And I put on here, let me make sure, cover sheet 1. Because then I know that I need to start with this side and move my way over. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So first of all, we have our score lines here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to burnish those score lines. And make sure they're burnished well. It makes it easier to see as you're going along. And on most of these, we really only have, I think, really 2 full score lines. We have that third one on the second sheet just indicating the 2 inches. So here we go. This is the front cover. This is cover sheet 1. I know it's upside down. And this is going into the back of our folio. So what I'm going to do, you have a choice here. You can either glue the second paper onto the first one inside here, or you can do it to the back, whichever you feel most comfortable about. So I'm going to take this one and I am going to burnish those score lines on this one. And I'm going to burnish the actual score lines. I'm not going to burnish the fake score line. I just have it in there as a line for me to do it where it's a light line so I can see it. You may have struggle seeing it, but I can see it. Our fake score line is right about there. It's 2 inches in, and I can see it pretty good on here. So what I'm going to do to help me to get this lined up is I'm going to then come in here. I'm going to line it up to my side, and I can see the score line here. And what I'm going to do, this is my kind of my fake score line, is to try to get this all butted up together so that I'm even on the top and the bottom and matching up this section right here. I just like to make sure that it's matching up properly, and I'm going to take my ruler. I know if I started over there I probably could measure it, you know, that way. Sugar plums, I'm going to do that, sorry. Should have done that right from the beginning. I'm going to tuck this under, matching up my imaginary score line basically. So I want to make sure that this comes to 6 3/4, and when I have that, what I then do for me, because it makes it easier, I draw an actual pencil line down that, which I probably could have done before I did any of that. So then what that is for me is that tells me that's where I'm going to need my glue. So I'm going to come in here. Of course, it's not going to come out. Oh, goodness gracious. Only on camera. So I come along and I'm going to do that right along the edges of those. Trying not to make it too thick, so that, because I don't want it to go over the edge. And now that I have my lines on here, I don't have to be as careful to that I'm even on the back side and the front side. I just know that this should evenly, if I'm following the line on here, I should be even. Yep, 6 3/4. And you can, if you can see, I'm pretty clean across the top here. I'm a little bit off, but pretty clean along the bottom here too. But this little bit, what I'll do is I'm going to go and I'll do a snip. It's just minuscule. It's not even, it's a 1/16 of a 1/16. So then we have our folio, or our cardstock folio, put together. And then what I do is I cover this whole folio with my double matting. So what I'm going to do is I come in and I pull out, you'll need actually 6 pieces of 12 by 12 cardstock, or 8.5 by 11. You're going to have to cut out 6 pieces as well. And you might not have as much remnants left over, but I use my cutoffs for my tags. I use it for, actually I even used it for double matting on my spines, because once I cut this page, the length of this will come out of what I've cut off for this page. So in cutting out, what I end up doing then for this album is I usually write down what size all my mats should be and how many I need. I don't necessarily always cut my patterned paper ahead of time, but I always lay out my mats. So for my first mat, so if you see the first mat here, what I need is 4 pieces of 6 3/8 by 8 7/8. And that's going to give us an 1/8 of an inch difference. And then there's another section. This is for the back page. I need 6 5/8 by 8 7/8. I need 2 of those because this is going to be front and back. And then for one spine, which is the larger spine, I'm going to need 1 3/8 by 8 7/8. You'll need 2 of those. And for the 1-inch spine, it's 7/8 by 8 7/8. I'll need 2. And the reason why I need 2 or 4, the reason I need 4 for these sides because I'm going to do the inside and the outside. And then the one where it's 2 for it is 6 5/8 by 8 7/8. I need 2 because I'm doing this one and I'm doing this one. And then I go back and I cut my second mats. So I need 4 at 6 1/4 by 8 3/4, 2 at 6 1/2 by 8 3/4, and then another 2 at 1 1/4 by 8 3/4, and 2 at 8 3/4 and 8, I'm sorry, at 3/4 by 8 3/4, 2 of them. And so again, we come back in and now we're doing our green matting. So we need 4 of these because we need it for the inside and then the outside. We need these, 2 of these because I need 1 for here and 1 for the outside, 1 for here and 1 for the outside, and 2 of this, 1 for inside and outside. And then I go ahead and I glue in all my matting as I go. Now if I need to put magnets or ribbon on it, I will put that usually under the designer paper is what I usually do. So once I have this all matted and I have the base going, I have it all glued together and that folio is ready for me to put designer paper on. So I hope this wasn't too confusing. Truly, it's just a count out on your ruler in order to get the sizes that you're going to need. Now obviously if you're going to make an album that is 8 by 9, let's just say the cover is 8 by 9, you know, you may have to add a third piece of paper into it, and I haven't mapped that one out necessarily to see if I have enough. But just looking at this one being 6 1/2 by 9, I'm thinking if I did an 8 by 9, I probably would only have a 1/2 inch to merge it together with the 12 by 12. Just guessing. That's guessing. So, but this is a really nice way to measure it out. You get more of a visual. You can count off by the inches, and you can write some additional notes in here. And this pretty much is your folio then, and you're ready to go. And it's easily read to be able to put it together. Now, any kinds of flips and flaps and those kinds of things, you know, if you can add that to this if you'd like to do that, but you don't have to because they could be different each time how you lay out the folio, but the base of it is probably going to be pretty much the same. So let me know if this was really confusing. I'd like to know because I'd like your feedback and what I could have done to make it a little bit easier to understand. If you liked it, then let me know that as well. If there's other things that you'd like tutorials on, how to make specific things I've done, how to cover a mini album, how to put the hinges in a mini album, and now I'm doing a cardstock folio, and I have I'm going to do a chipboard folio, so there'll probably be some boxes in the future, a basic box, how to measure that out and how to figure how all of that works as well. So I will carry on as I get more information on what might be a part of the basics for paper crafting. Thanks so much. If you liked this video and you thought it was good, please give me hit that like button and leave me a comment. I love to hear what you have to say, and I try to answer every single person that messages me. I try, and you know, I'm not that big of a channel that I can't do that right now, and maybe later on I won't be able to do it as much. But thanks so much. You know, have a wonderful evening and happy crafting. Thank you.